Hey folks, Quill18 here, and welcome to a quick channel update about Europa Universalis 4 and Conquest of Paradise, the new expansion that's coming out in just a few days. But before I get into that, I want to give a shout out to Mark. Mark is someone I met at the fan meetup in Toronto. He's a great guy, and I know that he's undergoing some pretty hard hospital surgery type things right now, and so I wanted to say, you know, thanks for watching, and I hope your spirits stay up, man. I know it's rough, but anyway, that's it. I'm thinking about you. Anyway, so the channel, the Europa, that's what I'm talking about. So Conquest of Paradise is coming out, and in case you don't know, it's an expansion pack that is mostly going to deal with, well, the colonization of the Americas. It's got two major aspects, I guess. One is it's going to greatly expand the options for Native Americans, because right now, playing as them is kind of boring. There's not a whole lot to do. There's not a lot of technology options, building options, anything like that. I mean, maybe you can conquer your direct neighbor, and then you mostly sit around and wait for the Europeans to show up and conquer you. And you can do a little bit more than that, but it's not easy, and it's not necessarily fun. Why does it say Great Britain over here? What bookmark am I in? That's weird. Huh, just a bit of a graphic glitch. Anyway, I guess I had another bookmark loaded before. I think that's what was going on. Anyway, so this expansion is going to expand them and make them a little bit more interesting to play. Now, they might still have problems when the Europeans show up, of course, but up until then, they're going to have a really interesting game. And then after that, they're still going to be able to play a little bit more competitively. There's going to be a lot more Native American groups created, including like single province minor nations, which is going to be kind of cool to see. So that's one thing. And then the other thing, especially relevant to European colonial powers, is when you create colonies over here, I mean, they can be colonies as in an expansion of your nation, right? You can take this province here, Cayenne, as Portugal, and it just becomes another part of Portugal. But what you can also do is set up a colonial government. So if you got a few provinces over here, you can create a colonial government out of that. So there'll be colonial Portugal, for example, or it might have different names. I'm not sure if it at some point starts to become called colonial Brazil or something like that. I'm not sure. Those nations, those colonies, at that point will basically act like a vassal. You are no longer having to directly micromanage them. In many ways, they're very similar to a vassal. If you declare war, they give you part of their income, all that kind of stuff. What's interesting is colonial governments are going to be able to wage war against each other independently of the parent nation, which is kind of cool. And obviously all this is going to tie in very highly to the independence movement and different things like that, because they're going to eventually potentially want to break away from their parent nation. So and there's a few other changes coming up, and including some balance changes, but those are the big ones. And so I really, in the next Let's Play, which I'm hoping to start when Conquest of Paradise comes out, is I'm hoping to play something that involves this colonialism, right? So again, it points very heavily at a main European nation in my mind. The native stuff might be cool, and it might be fun to dabble with. I'm not sure if that's the first thing we want to Let's Play. I don't know. Leave me a comment down below. If the native stuff is what you're most interested in, let me know. Otherwise, if you want colonial stuff, let me know. And then the big question becomes, when do we start? Because of course, the standard mentality is, well, of course we're going to start in 1444 at the start of the game, right? Well, not necessarily. We don't have to do that, especially if we're looking to do some colonial stuff, because the problem is the first, I don't know, 50 to 100 years, depending on what power you're playing in Europe here, is just going to be relatively samey European stuff. I mean, the next patch is coming out, which is going to change some of the balance and might affect a few of the mechanics here or there, just a tiny bit. But mostly it's going to be what we've seen and experienced. And I would like to dive right into the new mechanics and see what they're like. So one idea is we could just step forward. I mean, a new world, this is one of the bookmarks set here, 1492. It's just about 50 years in the future. Well, not in our future, but in the future of the normal start. Things haven't really changed that much, to be honest. I mean, there's still Aragon and Navarra. France is not yet blobbed up. Burgundy is gone. I guess that's a little bit different. There's still a Scotland. But other than that, the 1444 and 1492 starts are pretty samey, except that the technology will have advanced a little bit. So which means we're that much closer to just going overseas and doing some crazy stuff here. And we could push it even further. We can move forward, further and further forward. Now, one of the questions still in all that is, who might we play? It's unfortunate that I've already played Castile, because it would be an excellent pick for this sort of thing, as would Portugal. But of course, Portugal might be a little samey feeling as Castile, given that that was the, just the last Let's Play. England is always a possibility. Obviously very influential in North America. As a French Canadian, the idea of playing a colonial France actually sounds quite fun. The European France sounds in terms of play because they are, the big blue blob, right? They're in such a dominant position to start off with. Doesn't mean they're easy mode, and you can set all kinds of different challenges. And specifically, if we're looking to do colonial France, that's kind of fun. Especially if we advance, maybe, well, let's advance another 100 years. Let's advance to the start of the 80 Years' War. France is almost completely blobbed up. Do we have anything in North America yet? No, but maybe that's something you could race for. It's kind of interesting. Something else that's interesting that happens at this bookmark, we see an entirely new nation show up on the board, the Netherlands. Now, I don't know if you know this, but my my demographics on YouTube here, when I look at my top 10 countries where my people are from, it goes, I think US is first, and then UK, and then Canada, and then the 4th, 5th, and 6th position move around a lot, but it tends to be something like Sweden, Germany, and the Netherlands. They keep switching position. Who's in the number 4, 5, and 6 slots changes all the time, depending on, I don't know, the weather or something like that. Now, if you combine all the Scandinavian countries together, Scandinavia as a whole is generally in the number 3 position. But yeah, so the Netherlands might actually be really fun to play. And of course, the Netherlands were very much involved in colonial stuff. They don't have much of a presence over here these days, although there's still a couple of islands here and there that are present. But for example, I believe New York, if I'm not wrong, used to be called New Amsterdam. So that gets kind of interesting. Now, of course, okay, starting at the 80 Years' War bookmark is when they first show up. In fact, even if I back up by 1 year, no, it's all Spain, right? So during the 80 Years' War, so in 1579, that bookmark, there you go. Netherlands have just declared their independence from Spain. And to me, that sentence always blows my mind. Like, wait, what does Spain have to do with the Dutch? Like, what, Spain, what are you doing here? Go home, Spain. You're drunk. But, it was a thing. Look, Spain. Spain was all over the place. It was a thing with us. Anyway, yeah, so they've just broken out of that. Now, I suspect that the start of the game is mostly going to be some skirmishing back and forth to Spain. In fact, hell, half their territory here is occupied by the Netherlands. What happens if I go forward? Still occupied. These are not official bookmarks, so they're not going to necessarily be super accurate one way or another. Let's go by 10s instead. Occupied. Oh, Spain retakes it. Interesting. Anyway, so, there's that, and then we can look at expanding more overseas at that point. But if we're talking about the Netherlands, instead of a historical start, what if we started, okay, for the sake of argument, oops, let's go back to the start. What if we started as Burgundy? Now, Burgundy is interesting because they can actually, you can play, as a player, you can play as Burgundy and be totally peachy keen and fine. The AI Burgundy tends to fall apart pretty quickly because they have an event if their king starts off with no heir, and if your king dies without an heir, then almost certainly Austria will just inherit all of Burgundy. That's the way it tends to go in the AI sort of driven games because, well, historically that's sort of kind of what happens, right? But as a player, that event does not affect you. If your king dies without an heir, it's the same as always. You get, I don't know, some random person steps up to the plate and you just keep playing. So you're immune to that sort of nonsense. And you're pretty big, right? Now, France is still always going to be a major thorn in your side, but they're actually a really fun nation to play. How do I know? I've been playing as them. And specifically, I've been playing a game as Burgundy to see exactly what's involved in breaking off the Netherlands. Now, you have a decision as Burgundy. If you, first of all, you have to reach admin tech level 10, which is always the case. And then if you control Utrecht, man, I really should play as the Netherlands because hearing me pronounce any of this is going to be hilarious. And Friesland, if you control these 3 provinces and actually have cores on them, then you can enact a decision to become the Netherlands, which is quite interesting. Can I get more map modes in here? No, I can't. You know what? Let's go into the game. And what that does is it turns you into the Netherlands. And any provinces that are part of French territory, or the French region, there's a regional map mode right here, right? So this is the France region, or the French region. Anything belonging to that, which to start off with would be Picardy, Rethel, Barrois, and everything down here, goes to France just instantly. But you turn orange and you get some cores on all the lowland region stuff, which is, well, basically all of this here, including, mostly it's going to be the stuff you already have. But possible you don't have Liège, possible, like, that's pretty much it. Because you start with everything else. But it's possible you don't have this. Possible that you've lost some territory. Well, this will ensure that you have cores on everything. And it turns you into the Netherlands. And what it does, it's quite interesting. Did I? Oh, I became Friesland instead. That's not what I meant to do. Whoops. It changes your ideas as well. So you have Burgundian ideas initially. Well, that will change you to Dutch ideas. And they're pretty damn good. Now, so if you're playing as Burgundy, you can just play straight up as Burgundy and try to take territory there. But if you lose some territory, your backup plan is turn into the Netherlands and use their super ideas to super take over the world via trade and colonization. So that's a thing. Now, I started a game as Burgundy, as I was saying, with the explicit intention of turning into the Netherlands to see how it went. So I have, if I go into single player mode, yeah. You're very pretty menu screen, but just go faster. Saved games, go into cloud, go into Netherlands. So I have this saved that I have. In fact, this is not the latest one, because in my latest one, I have Calais, but I'm playing on a different computer there, so I apparently didn't transfer over the latest save, so I'll have to go and check at that. So here I've turned into the Netherlands, and one of the interesting things, like I said, anything that's part of the French region goes to France. Well, what I did here is I released Nevers as a vassal ages and ages ago, and I've slowly been feeding them my provinces. In fact, I could have even fed them Bourgogne itself if I had manually switched my capital over to, say, Holland, and then gave them that as well. And I didn't do that. I ended up enacting the decision to become the Netherlands while my capital was still here, and I couldn't just sell my capital to Nevers at that point, which is why I lost that. But I still have a fair amount of my original territory as a vassal, which I've actually since then integrated into my nation. So now the Netherlands extends all the way down here. This is actually a really hairy game, because at one point, Lorraine was leading a personal union with France, and that's bad. When I'm planning on doing a lot of war against the HRE, and part of the HRE has a personal union that leads France, and in fact, Lorraine had an explicit alliance with Austria as well. It was very, very, very bad. And actually, since I tend to play relatively aggressive, plus I was trying to hit some windows of timing, taking Utrecht, Gelre, and Friesland led to enough aggressive expansion that I was facing a coalition with England and Austria and some other people and a personal union to France. It was extremely unpleasant. They actually declared war on me, and woo, it was not good. But in my later save, I actually have Calais, and that was thanks to I declared war on England. They were still allied with Austria, but on my side, I think I had Castile, Hungary, and Denmark, if I'm remembering correctly. Now, I think that both Hungary and Denmark didn't really contribute much to the war. They weren't in a position to do that. I roped them into this war when they were relatively, like, weak and not well off. And mostly what they just did is they distracted Sweden, which was allied to England, and Austria as well. So Sweden just went and took over a bunch of Danish territory. Austria went and took over a bunch of Hungarian territory. Meanwhile, I just went and grabbed Calais and then just sat there and tanked it out very defensively and like drew people into my territory. And it was a very difficult fight. But anyway, so now I've got the Netherlands. Now this is a Netherlands that is much bigger and much more powerful than the other bookmark and much earlier, which certainly would make, you know, an easier game than starting as the Netherlands in the 80 Years' War, although you can certainly do a better Netherlands than this if you want. If you start as Burgundy, you can go more aggressively east, take on more of Munster over here, and Munster, I don't remember. Yeah, I think this is Munster, and that's Munster. And it always messes with me, because at some point I remember seeing like, oh, someone's got an alliance with Munster. Oh, who cares? That's Ireland. They're not going to get involved in this. And then it was like, oh no, it's this one. Shit. That was less good. But overall, we're fine. So this is a Netherlands, I think, that is a much stronger position to play the colonial game. And that's what I'm thinking about doing, is actually importing this save. Maybe not this one, but actually I think the one I've got Calais. Because Calais gives me access to the Straits of Dover, which should shrink my colonial range, or shrink the distance to my colonies ever so slightly and make it a little easier to get started. So that's what I'm considering. It will not have the Conquest of Paradise extra natives, but I think it's going to be a very interesting start otherwise. No one has any real colonies overseas yet. Portugal has one province, so the fact that the colonial forms of governments haven't they haven't kicked in yet, shouldn't be much of an issue. Of course, we still got lots of room to drop some colonies in Africa as well, because Netherlands, of course, did that. So, anyway, I think that that has a lot of potential. Let me know in the comments what you think, what you would like to see. I mean, we could just, I don't know, start a game as Sweden and, you know, take over all of Scandinavia and then go over to North America and paint the world blue, as I suppose you should in a Paradox game. Meh. Let me know. See you next time, folks. Bye-bye.